Good morning and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. My name is Keaton Shaw and we are very happy that you are able to join us once more. This morning we will be focusing on a variety of topics. So we will be, of course, continuing the conversation in relation to the fatal incident that transpired last week, Friday, in Pointe-à-Pitre with 5 divers, one of which survived, 4 of which unfortunately have passed away. 3 bodies were found, 1 is yet to be recovered. Still very hard to speak about this, ladies and gentlemen. It's very difficult. And in our position, we deal with these situations, not specifically to this, but tragedy, we deal with it on a weekly basis at least. And it's very difficult to not get emotional in these positions. But in order to continue the conversation, we have to try and set aside all emotion and try and think clearly, consciously, and concisely in order to try and absorb as much and hopefully get some sort of answer. Alongside me this morning is my co-host and colleague, my good friend, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Keaton. And yes, the situation is still a bit stunning, which is a bit odd to say because we've seen a fair amount of death in the nation, particularly recently. Our murder rate has not magically been solved or decreased. One thing I'd just like to point out, the sewage problem with Beetham, with the leak, that has been fixed after 2 months. I do have to ask, why is it that things have to get delayed and will information about this case, as with other situations, be delayed, or in some cases, it takes so long to come out that we don't even know if they give us much of anything because the interest from the nation, they take so long as though they're waiting for the interest to wane, let it die. And hopefully that does not happen in this case as well.
Yeah. Also joining us via Zoom this morning is our commentator guest for Wednesdays. She is the former Minister of Finance and attorney at law. We certainly like to refer to her as an academic. She is Miss Karen Nunes Teixeira. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning to you, Keaton. Good morning to you, Sean, and to your worship on a cold and wet Wednesday morning. But we do have, as you said, there's so many issues, some of them heartbreaking, as you did say.
Yes, unfortunately, heartbreaking indeed. We got news showing that, of which we discussed yesterday morning in relation to 3 of the bodies being recovered.
Yes.
What I'd like to highlight now is that yesterday, around midday, there was an article that was circulating by a particular media house, which actually quoted a senior member of the OWTU stating that the 4th body of the missing diver was found in pieces. And it goes back again. Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited were very quick to respond, immediately refuting these claims, stating that this is simply not true. They will update the nation as rescue operations continue, recovery operations continue, and they will update the family on a timely basis once they have information. And I just like to say, it's rather premature that we are very quick to break news. We want to be the first to break the news. We want to be the first to inform the nation. But you're not credible, at least in sourcing your news. You don't do your verifications. You don't do your checks. It's imbalanced. And this not only fuels the conversation and the frustration that the nation is experiencing right now, but need I say, it goes back, adding to the trauma and the grief that the families are experiencing. And I'd like to once more plead with everyone. I'm so sorry that in my position as part of the media of Trinidad and Tobago, that I also have to plead with the media. Be very, very mindful. Think, do your due diligence. and be very cautious before putting information out there. You don't know what damage you are doing, what you are pushing if you continue to spew unverified information. So please, I beg of you, let us try and prevent us from further causing any harm than what is already being experienced. I was rather frustrated yesterday, Sean, at the fact that this is what took place, and the mere fact that it came from a reputable media house, I suppose.
The problem is, there's one thing to speculate once both the speaker and the listeners understand it is speculation, just throwing out things to consider. But ultimately, you have to know that speculation is not necessarily going to be true, right? When we don't have information, fine, we are prone to speculate, and in some cases, you can't just put your head in the sand and just, well, we have to wait and see, right? Because we don't know what's being hidden. But when it's being reported as true, or when not necessarily reported as true, but when the context implies that it is definite, it is a definite assertion, then you run into that territory of, hold on, what are you doing? And dare I say, there are times when even when now as a presenter you try to say we're just giving opinions or speculations or guesses, you do have to realize that once we say it, it's no longer within our control. So we have to worry about the fact that some people might interpret it the wrong way and might even go so far to say, but I thought you say that it happened. So it's like, hold on, I said that I was speculating. So these are things that unfortunately we do have to bear in mind and be very careful to when we speculate, and sometimes determine just not to speculate on certain aspects or certain matters, like to pronounce about a body and what happened to it. Because the trauma of getting that wrong that you could cause a family member.
Well, that has been caused.
Maybe the immediate family who was at the scene, they know better, but extended family is waiting to hear news. They will just take it immediately at face value.
Well, very quickly, it goes back to what we was talking about, communication. And how does that play on the mindset of the family stating, well, we're learning this again from a media house, where we're learning this for the first time, and all of that we need to be very careful of. We truly do. Anyway, I believe OSHA has indicated that they are initiating their own investigation surrounding the circumstances of the causes of this incident in relation to the Occupational Safety and Health Act. And there are many questions we have, but we need to explore this from a general perspective, and then we can view it microscopically. I believe we have with us now, joining us on Talking Point, an individual, an officer of safety, health, and security with many years of experience in the oil industry. Good morning, sir.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Very terrible news. Tragedy has struck, and of course, there's so many questions surrounding the circumstances of this incident, but more so in relation to safety and health best practice. And I want to thank you for joining us just to give us some general information. I'd first like to start off with a topic in relation to the permit to work systems, and this is general OSHA standards. If you could just enlighten us a bit further as to what are permit to work systems and how they may have come into play in relation to what transpired.
Okay, well, before that, I would suggest we look at the fundamental level. When certain hazardous works are to be taken, you should have systems in place that would prevent or stop, bring the work to a halt, or you should not allow the work to start if it doesn't meet the standards. So that the permit to work system is really to let people, each person know at every stage of the work how it is being done, and to ensure that it is within requirements and the approval of the permit to work system. So the question, yesterday when I was listening to your program, this is what came up in the mind one time. And I guess probably later on, these things will come out in the investigation. The one, was there a permit to work system in place? And within that permit to work system, you have what is called a lockout, tagout, which ensures that whatever machinery or in this case welding was to be done, all the caution and so on that would take place and that are required, all those are in place to ensure that they are in place at all times during the operation. So the lockout tagout is a simple system where you lock off the controls that can cause machinery or electrical current. In other words, you stop that system is supposed to physically prevent anything starting back or prevent any error from starting on its own, so to speak. So that the question came up, well, with respect to the permit to work, was that in place? That was the necessary approval in place? Was a meeting, for instance, of all the players? Did that meeting take place? And how long before the work start up?
So, if you could just inform us, by your knowledge, usually in terms of practice, who grants these permits?
Well, it can be granted it should be granted by, if there is for instance, an authority present. Let's say, OSHA. My opinion is that some OSHA representative should be at that meeting. You have the safety department of the company, the parent company, or the main contractor.
Right.
Right, and and at a senior level, right, and the approval should come from one of either the authority, OSHA, and together with the senior people from the main contractor and so on. It would vary according to the situation. You usually have a union representative. You have some expert or the certifying authority in the country, as the case may be, so that they would when the heads come together, they would be able to ensure the prevention of any accident or so.
So, one thing I have to ask, as you mentioned, the lockout, tag out.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know what caused the suction, if it was mechanical, if it was a pressure differential, for reasons that we have yet to be given any sort of explanation. So we don't know if there was equipment that needed to be locked off or not, although that has been speculation that I have heard more than once with regards to commentary on the situation. I do also have to ask, to what extent do you undertake repairs like this, where there is a risk of an accident and you have a shift change going on? Because the shift change was one of the reasons given for why the rescue efforts were were stymied somewhat, or a factor that negatively impacted the rescue efforts?
Well, for instance, at a shift change, I don't know if you have ever been on one of those rigs or so.
No, I haven't.
It's like watching ants moving all over the place, but they know where they're going. Each person know where they're going and know what they have to do. So in other words, at the end of the day, there is supposed to be order. Now, in relation again to the permit to work system, you must ensure that before you start any work, that the system can be separated from the normal operations.
Mm-hmm.
So that, for instance, your guard, you should have guards around I'm talking about physical guards, not human beings, but the physical guards around the area, the entry points. So it might be prevention would bar people from going in just like that, or just walking in like that. And in this case, I wasn't there, but I would imagine that these people would have the necessary experience and so on, and to know how not to enter, these areas. For instance, how the guys went in, they went in, were they able to just walk in like that, go in like that? Was anyone at the entrance checking them out before they go in? Because if that is not in place, then the permit, the work should not go on. Anything that is not in place as approved by the particular work permit should not take place. It has nothing to do with the amount of millions of dollars or whatever, because at the end of the day, a life is priceless.
Well,
we all would agree with that.
Well, sir, my final question I have to ask.
Yes.
Rescue efforts included individuals who are not officially part of any sort of rescue team. Generally speaking, in emergencies, would it be right to take on volunteers in an industrial case, or are safety concerns warranted enough that the people in charge might say no to any sort of volunteers because you risk to people who might not be approved to conduct any sort of rescue in these complex situations would outweigh the benefits?
Well, once you can verify beyond a reasonable doubt that the person or persons going to or coming to assist with a rescue they are well trained, they are certified, right? And experience helps. These people must be experienced in doing the relevant rescuing. So, to even that and all, right? Again, is at the fundamental level. All that should be approved and agreed before any work starts.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and in these kinds of industries, in the oil industry, these things are approved at the highest level in the organization, so that they even at the executive level at times, in operational part of the organization. So, what is the relationship between the OSHA and barrier, for instance?
Yeah.
When I say relationship, I mean talking about are they kept abreast with
speed,
what is
yeah.
taking place in the operations and so major things.
So my final question comes in two parts. I just need to concretize these 2 points. First of all, you would have just spoken about the relationship, at least, between OSHA and Parafuel Trading Company Limited, and by extension, any company.
Any company, yes.
But as you would have stated, permit to work systems, OSHA, at least a representative, a safety and health officer should have been present, or at least an independent body. You even mentioned a member of the union, so that in order for this to transpire. But who is responsible in the event of an emergency? Who has oversight over the lockout tagout procedure? And secondly, in all of this, well, if you just answer that question first, we'll get to the other question after.
Well, the overall person in charge should be a member of at the executive level, who has the final authority, so to speak, and approval whether work takes place or not. Right now, it could be with a safety executive, which is always better, and so on. But we cannot hold a safety professional accountable for that situation, because they may not have the authority to stop the work or prevent the work from taking place. Now let us don't pussyfoot with this. We know our culture here. We understand our culture in Trinidad and Tobago, and we understand that people are at the junior level are intimidated. You can be intimidated easily by just, for instance, an executive walks in the room and his body language is one of, well, you see today, nobody going home or getting paid before we do X, Y, and Z. And everybody give up their space of authority and forget what could happen, right, should an error take place, which would result in that catastrophe that happened there. And most of all, as managers, we must be compassionate to those. I mean, I have sons, and imagine you calling me to tell me that my son is no longer in this life. When I just earlier on, I dispatched him for his work. I mean, managers have to start thinking about this in that way. Right?
Well, so the final, very, very, very quickly, due for time, very quickly, you would have indicated that for the permit to work systems and the lockout tagout procedures, all stakeholders, at least, we would have hoped that they would have been notified, but should have been notified about this. They should have all been aware about this before works began, and all stakeholders, including the maintenance crew, the divers.
Yeah, well, with the divers, I mean, the divers are under instructions, and they cannot come on the compound, for instance, or in this case, go down in the water and represent their pariah, so without the permission, expressed or otherwise, so that it comes back to the people with the authority to prevent accidents. Let me put it simple. Simple, to prevent the accident. So there might have been some slip-ups or errors, I prefer to put it that way, that took place in that situation, right? And especially at a change of shift. There must be somebody to ask what we call the foolish questions or the annoying questions.
Yeah.
Right? Did we do so and so, and ask it until you actually it satisfy your situation.
All right, sir. Well, listen, thank you very much for your time and for sharing your knowledge with us this morning. We appreciate it. We have a better understanding, at least, of the procedures that should have taken place before this happened. So thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
You too, bye.
That was a safety, health, and security expert with numerous years of experience within the oil industry. Thank you very much. All right, folks, Karen Nunes-Ishara is still with us, so we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, she is going to give us her perspective of this entire situation. There are so many angles and so many aspects, so we will dive into this right after this.
Burning questions, urgent topics, welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the Content Capital. Sean, at least we now have a better understanding of the general practice of safety and health standards before these exercises are carried out.
Yeah, and rescuing, because I think even just having experience at rescuing matters. You don't want to send someone untrained into a situation. That was probably one of the factors why the sons were not allowed to go in again, the risk. And I can understand because of the unknown. So that perspective complicates the scenarios, one of the reasons why we shouldn't necessarily speculate too much on any conclusions. But there's also further perspectives to be considered here with regards to the legal.
Yes, and that is where Karen Nunes-Ishara comes into play. Karen, I'm sure you would have been following this story since it first came to light last week, Friday. We too have been, as I say, very emotional and traumatic. But so many angles that we could try and analyze this situation. And one of them is the mere fact that individuals, including family members, members of the unions, and even political activists have been, calling negligence and have been calling for their heads of Paria. But we don't want to really jump to that as yet. We don't have all the details and all the information. But for what we actually do have, from a legal standpoint, could you just give us your opinion and your thoughts on this?
Yes. Before I do that, I would just like to extend my consolation, my prayers to the families that have been affected. It is terrible what has happened, and I don't know that any of us, it's not only that these young men or persons have died, but it's in a horrific manner. But from a legal point of view, unfortunately, you have to put aside emotion. So one of the things that would come up immediately is the liability, and liability for what? Meaning in law, cause of action. And so, as you know, the divers were hired by a company, a separate company, which would be like an independent contractor,
Yeah.
third party. And normally when you have an independent contractor situation, you often outsource a skill set. It's because the company, then the independent contractor is deemed to be liable for his workers for a number of, in terms of pay and NIS and all that. But in this case, there's no question that even though there was a company that was hired by Paria, there's no question in this case that Paria also will be liable under this duty, what they call a non-delegable duty. In other words, there's some duties of care that you cannot delegate to someone else, and that meaning the company. And that is where the incident or the circumstance is extremely dangerous, extremely hazardous. And there's no question that the nature of the job that the young men had undertaken was extremely hazardous and extremely dangerous. So that Paria will all, of course, be liable. And what do they be liable for? Well, the men are not their employees. They're employees of the independent contractor. But they have a duty, and their duty, as I said, is to maintain, as not only OSHA, because you quoted OSHA from the certification point of view, but from an employment point of view, and the liability of Paria, as well as the employer, that is the independent contractor, but more so Paria, is a duty of care, a duty to provide a safe place of work, a duty to provide a safe system of work. And both the contractor can demand that, did you provide me with a safe place and safe system of work so that my workers would not be at risk. So based on, as we said, you use the word speculation quite often, but the fact is that something went dreadfully wrong, and it appears that there is liability. I mean, just on the bare facts of from going from rescue to recovery, the timelines that have been put in the papers, of course, we know that we are not privy to everything, but certainly there's enough there to know that how the matter was handled, there was extreme negligence. And in law, when we talk about negligence, it's not every negligent act you're liable for, but in this case it would be, and that is a duty of care. Did you owe a duty of care to these divers? Yes, you did. They were on your site, your employment site. They were doing work on in the course of their duties, and they were undertaking very hazardous work. So there was a duty of care. Did you breach a duty? But that's where these experts are coming in, and I would advise, on the basis of transparency and accountability, that one of the members of the union should be on that committee, because they are looking out for the interests of their workers, and it allows people to have confidence. We don't want to go through an AV drilling case where up to now, I don't think anybody believes that AV drilling, I don't think that the government has convinced the population that AV drilling delivered all that oil. And and of course the client was the government. So to himself. So I agree with the union that they should have a seat at that table to represent the interests of the workers and their families. So that's a duty of care. And then there's the breach of that duty, which appears clear from the facts that we've been given. And as a result, damages occurs. Well, we do know there's been death. Now, the thing that they will try to use in law is causation. Did their failure, their breach of duty cause the death? In other words, but for their failure to do X, Y, and Z, some of which your previous speaker spoke to, would these men have survived? Would it have been a rescue as apart from a recovery exercise? So there's a causation, and I don't want to get too legalese about it, but it appears on the face of it that they clearly have a case for negligence, and it would be against the Paria company, because just on looking on the bare facts, there has been definitely negligence in this undertaking. The second point I wanted to make is I found it egregious that the head of Paria Chairman Paria is off playing golf. I don't care if he decided to come home on the Friday night instead of Monday when he's supposed to come back, because he stayed until he played his round. And that says a lot. That says a lot about your priorities and thinking it is good enough to tell us, well, at least I came home on Friday instead of Monday. I mean, and that was the whole message from the beginning. People under a shed, no food, that's what I'm reading, and I don't think it's untrue. No food, no sense of comfort, telling them at the same time that they're deceased. Even the police would tell the family before they tell the media to give them a chance. I think all of these things that was so terrible and I will say this, I know Minister of Energy tried to do some damage control.
Yes.
But the damage is so great and so powerful because of the way, Sean said it. I mean, that is like a hellish death. I can't imagine being stuck in a hole 36 inches diameter, no light, murky water, and knowing your death. I mean, and you was there, it takes 4 hours based on what they said before you start doing anything. And only one person is saved because I guess it was his relative, and he took a chance and pulled him out. So from my point of view, they should settle this matter, because I don't think it will look good for them to go to court on this matter. Too much is going to come out. I think that the union should be a part of that, this expert to look after the interests of the families and the workers. And thirdly, they have a lot of damage control to do, to try as best they can to minimize the heartlessness of their response, starting with their chairman, George, playing golf in Tobago.
Karen, Newman George has been absolutely silent on this. The Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs had to hold a press conference, which I thought, in my opinion, was rather unfortunate. And let me just leave it at that. The Prime Minister releasing information to the public that he expresses his condolences to the family is minimal. It's minimal. But you mentioned that you don't think the government should go to court. They should try and settle this out of court because too much would come out. Don't you think that that perhaps going to court and going through with this process will allow for a better understanding, and not only a better understanding, if negligence is found on the part of those in charge, those at the helm of this entire incident, be it the executive management of Paria or anyone in that case, don't you think that that should come out so that rightfully they are prosecuted and pay for their actions, or may I say inaction?
Well, let me start with one point. Because I say they should settle does not mean that they don't have to give a report. So they're bringing in experts from international experts, I think BP and Shell, not people working here. They're bringing in these people. So part of the settlement must also include, you have to agree to the terms of the settlement. And one of the terms of the settlement is the publication of the findings of the report. So it does not mean that that would not be done. The second reason why I am hesitant about that is because it sounds all nice and good to talk about going to court. But if I use myself as a good example of that, and I mean, I'm an attorney at law. I was a minister of finance during part of the time, and I knew all the lawyers, both, and yet today we're in 2022, and I started my matter in 2015. And and it's not finished. It's at the Privy Council, hopefully we'll hear in July, but I'm not going to hold my breath and what I'm saying is that time passes and then they're delaying tactics and all kinds of things. And after 2-3 years, do you hear anybody talk about CL Financial Commission? Nobody's talking about that. Do you hear anybody talk about AV drilling? Nobody's talking about that. I think family should be given a proper settlement, something that can't replace their family, but something that is going to be of significance, and that a part of the agreement to settle is that the publication of the report of the findings of the committee, and that it should be published. So settlement does not mean a non-disclosure, because we will not be happy with that, and that it should include, as I said, OWT member. So in any event, we will find out what happened. But I know you might think it's sort of like closing it up and people not getting vindication, but I think the report will give some level of what went wrong, rather than, as you have used the word often, the speculation which we have had to go through because of the lack of information.
Well, one thing though, Karen, though, I will disagree with you. I'm not sure about local jurisdiction or English jurisdiction, but I have heard of high-profile cases where part of the settlement included an NDA. So
Yes.
to keep the controversy in check, the reason why the company would settle is to prevent disclosure, as you pointed out, that would take place in a court matter. And I would argue there's a part of me that would like to see it taken to the courts, because generally, if found against the company, the settlement might generally, it's expected to be larger. It's expected to be harsher in certain ways, as opposed to if they just settle it on their own. And I do wonder if sometimes it's expected. That's the expectation. If it goes to court, they might end up paying more. You're right. It doesn't always happen that way. But there is a part of me that hopes that the consequences would be harsh, not necessarily to stick it to Paria, but because I think it needs to be shown. Unfortunately, an example needs to be handed to the country. Paria might be a scapegoat.
What I will say is this, how I will qualify what I have said. They should start the action, because there are timelines, 4 years for contracts, 6 years for tour. So they should begin the proceedings. And as you know, many a case is settled at the doors of the court, where parties agree, and the stronger your negotiating position is, the better. You say, okay, we're going to court, you want everything come out, you want us to bring our because it is going to be expensive. Our expert witnesses, our thing, okay, let's have a field day in court. You'll never live this down. You want to put Mr. What's his name, Newman George, on the stand playing golf, and then saying, at least I come back on Friday. Okay, so there's so much they have to their benefit. So what I will say, as they do in many cases, in order to avoid the matter becoming statute barred, start the matter, start proceedings, start the action, and let us see how it goes from there. So I will qualify what I'm saying, but I think at the end of the day, it's not just the High Court, you're going Court of Appeal. It's not just Court of Appeal, it's Privy Council. And it's up and up, and it takes time. And people die, people's memories start to fade, all kinds of things go on. The people who were working in the company retired, all kinds of things. So yes, start the action,
Karen,
start the thing, and see if we can settle.
From that independent report, if negligence is found, could action then be taken? And now, when I say action, I mean in terms of from a perspective of the police, from the justice system, from the criminal justice system. Could action be taken against those found negligence just based off of that independent report, or would a police investigation, a criminal probe, have to take place before any sort of determination is made that charges can be laid against those who may be found guilty? Well, not found guilty, but deemed as guilty.
So the first thing is it a criminal offense, and what is the nature of the criminal offense? So I looked at the offenses against the Persons Act, and it seems gross negligence would constitute a criminal wrongdoing. But the punishment, when you're dealing with criminal law, it's not about compensation, it's about punishment. And from my reading, and of course a criminal law expert can be more helpful, is a fine, no imprisonment. And the report from the civil side, yes, can assist the police as they gather information, as they always do, in order to determine, the DPP is the one who finally determines, is there enough there that under section whatever of the Summary Offences Act or Criminal Law Act for us to pursue a criminal proceedings, and against whom, and the burden of proof and the standard of proof, as you well know, O.J. Simpson is always used as the classical case of, if you can't, you must acquit. If it doesn't fit, you have to acquit. In other words, the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a high burden. And then, whereas in civil matters, it's on a balance of probabilities. So you have an easier task. So to answer your question, from my minimal reading on the matter, the DPP does his own thing and the police will investigate, and they can use that report as part of their investigation. And at the end of the day, the DPP is the one to determine whether the matter in this case should go forward and who should be charged. But the punishment would be in the nature of a fine, certainly not compensation or incarceration, as I understand it.
Everyone has a right to have a vacation. But if that vacation gets in the way of you actually doing your duties, then I am so sorry. And this is why I go back. If Newman George was playing golf, Newman George, his duties, his active duties need to be suspended while this.
And that's why
takes
he's being
place.
silenced. Because I personally think, I do know Mr. George. I know him, I know his wife personally from way back over 20 years. So both parties, I know the husband and the wife. But I do think that that's just my feeling, and I don't think it's wrong. I think Stuart Young was really very not happy with Mr. George's response. And so he told him, you go and sit in a corner and keep quiet and let me handle this, because you coming out now, you're just going to make a bad situation worse. I really do think that is what is happening. And the Prime Minister trying to keep a loophole by it is so terrible, he can't even come out and talk. I mean, what damage does that make? I mean, he's not going to say who's wrong or not, just console and give his his prayers and his thoughts to the family. That the least you could do as a Prime Minister. My God, But I think Newman George has been told to stay out of the limelight and let the Minister of Energy handle this, because what he has done already has done a lot of damage.
Folks, let's take a quick break here on Talking Point. When we return, we'll briefly explore another topic before we break for news on the hour. This is WESN, the content capital.
I guess Newman is not.
Gift giving during a lockdown can still be hassle-free with a gift from FanZone with delivery options available nationwide. Visit and browse our Facebook and Instagram pages for all your official licensed merchandise and apparel, and have it delivered to your door. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. FanZone, we've got you covered.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McBean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN. Now, with the very little time that we have left, we need to touch on this topic, and that is in relation to public health regulations. Why is it that what is in place is still in place. To me, it's just not making any more sense. But then a light bulb hit all of us here on Talking Point, Karen, Sean, and myself, and we realized, hold on, it seems to be more political than anything. At least that's our interpretation of it.
Well, I think it's just convenient. I'm not willing to go that far. However, it is quite convenient that even a one-man protest in front of the Red House, where you can't say there's a lot of congregation there, a one-man protest is not allowed, not just at the height of the state of emergency, but even as recent as I believe a week ago or two. It probably was just a week. But Karen, I mean, you have had this topic basically at the tip of your tongue for weeks now and wanting to get into this.
Yes, well, I think this is not something only happening in Trinidad because, yes, I had been looking at it and, yes, I was in politics, so I can't help but allow that color, if you want to say, or to inform my opinions. One of the things that makes us a democracy is our rights of freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and those are rights that are enshrined in our Constitution. And that is a hallmark of a country that is a democracy. So when I have done my research, as I tend to do, I have found that in many countries, they have been saying that the COVID-19 pandemic, yes, in the early days, there was good reason to have all these 6 feet apart and all the other rules. But to many countries, and many of them were Latin American countries, were seen to be using the COVID-19 regulations as a means to suppress opposition, any sort of opposition to the government of the day. And why that has, in my respectful view, some truth in the case of Trinidad and Tobago is because the state of emergency that was called by the by publication of state emergency was for one reason and one reason only, not because of civil strife, not because of any natural disaster, but one reason: to control a contagious disease. So he did it once and then did it again, which he can under the Constitution. But he brought it to an end 10 days earlier, and that was I think it was in November, when that month to date had the highest recorded deaths from COVID, and yet you bring this state of emergency, which you put in place for the precise purpose of dealing with the COVID-19 spread. So why would you do that? Perhaps THA, December the 6th, when you had to be fighting an election, which you lost by hands down. And one of the other things too is when you looked at even now what is going on, these events held by the Ministry of Tourism at the Queen's Park, Savannah, even the opening of a restaurant and bar by the mayor of San Fernando, which is located next to a police station. I mentioned that already. Even the campaigning for the elections, you never saw the police take any action against these people breaking the COVID regulations, some of them without a mask, certainly not 6 feet apart, and not knowing whether they had, in many of these cases, whether they were vaccinated or not. Yet when people come out, a little small group, you use and tear gas. I mean, tear gas, that is intimidatory tactics, because what the message is being sent and understood by the population is that if you come out to protest against us, we are going to use the power of the court law in order to suppress your right of freedom of assembly. And what is very telling and ironic is that when the Section 34, if you remember that piece of legislation that was passed, I don't know if you recall that, but who led that march around the Savannah, or at least was a great main part of that protest against Section 34, was the Prime Minister Rowley, because we all understand there are 2 times that the public get to speak. One, when they put their finger to an election, and when they're able to peacefully protest against measures of the government. And this government is allowing no one to come out and exercise their freedom of expression and their freedom of assembly, and using the cover of COVID, to continue, and yet at the same time promoting this carnival, which obviously involves alcohol, which obviously involves close contact.
Karen,
the very same thing that you've said you want to protect me from.
Karen,
and
I'm going to have
it is clear that is the government. It is a shame on the government that they would do something like that. And I will tell you finally,
Karen,
they are fooling no one.
We're going to have to pause
yes,
on that
they have
for
the
now.
power.
We're going to have to pause on that for now because we have to break
they have the
for news on
ability
the
to
hour.
keep from saying anything, but
Okay, so
people are not fooled.
We have to break for news?
Yeah, we have to break for news on the hour.
All right. Stay tuned.
Seven is out. All day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Burning questions, urgent topics, welcome back to One-on-One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One-on-One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One-on-One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN, Content Capital.
AM Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, I, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy, there will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. only on your Content Capital, WESN.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the Content Capital. I'm Keaton Shaw. Alongside me, of course, is Mr. Sean Michael Small, and with us via Zoom is Ms. Karen Nunes Teixeira. We've all spoken. I think it's now time that we give the viewer the opportunity to express their opinion and share their thoughts with us. Call us and join us on Talking Point this morning, 623-9376, 622-9338. The number's on your screen. And we do have a caller with us from Pittsy Valley. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Sean, Keaton, and Miss Nunes.
Good morning.
Morning.
It is very unfortunate that Karen Nunes this morning said that the Prime Minister never sent out condolences and sympathy to the victims and their parents, which he did. I heard it. Sean and Keaton, you in the media, you supposed to know, you track these things, did send out a release.
We did say that, though. We said that on this morning's program. We said the Prime Minister sent out a release.
It's very unfortunate that Ms. Nunes just said there that the Prime Minister never did. It's very unfortunate.
Well,
have a nice day.
Have a nice day.
So
I think you misunderstood me. I meant that he didn't do it in person. Rather than sending out a release as the Prime Minister, he should have done it in person.
I was now gonna bring up
point.
that point because I understand what the caller is saying. He technically did go through that motion. And you could argue that he made a conscious decision. He thought better of appearing in person. There are reasons, but, that is subjective. I would quicker agree with Karen on this point. He could have done a bit more.
I think it was a matter of interpretation. Perhaps we should just be a bit clearer. That's all. Just be a bit more concise. But we have a caller on the line with us from Woodbrook. Good morning, caller. Oh, my apologies. LeBray, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I actually delayed leaving home because I needed to call in to clarify something.
Please.
As someone who has worked in the precursor company to Paria for over 25 years, and someone who has been responsible for signing work permits to allow contractors to perform work on system, I say that there is criminal negligence. This cuts me deeply because Paria was responsible for providing a safe area for these gentlemen to work. They initiated the work in a safe manner. Somewhere in this, while performing the work, safety became non-existent, and they were sucked into this 30-inch or 36-inch line.
Yeah.
Now, for this suction on this line to suddenly come into play, to drag these gentlemen into this line and into such a distance, several things could have happened. I am not intimately familiar with the line work, but I will say this. One, whatever protective or isolation by a pump being shut down or a valve being shut, that was removed.
Oh, yeah.
I am in favor of this matter reaching to court for the fact that no amount of money will compensate these families for their loved ones. No amount of money will compensate children who will not see their father, sisters who will not see their brother, or father. No amount of money. I am shaking right now because this is serious.
So, Kola, I just want a clarification. They keep saying that there's a U between berth 5 and berth 6. But is it, do you know enough to just confirm that there is it's not a closed U from 5 to 6, there's more?
I am not intimately familiar.
You're not sure? Okay.
No, but if, I don't want to take up too much time.
Yeah. But I want to...
Let me say this. There were systems in place in Petrotrin. There's a permitter work system, a job hazard analysis or job safety analysis, and a lockout tagout system.
Yeah.
This lockout tagout system is a system that was recently, for the past couple of years before Petrotrin was shut down, introduced so that any hazards that would be present in an area, if it's by isolating a valve, this valve would be changed shut, and there would be a padlock closed, so it could not have been reopened. This pump would have been electrically isolated if there was a pump connected to the line work. So I would say, based on my experience on signing permits to allow contractor to work, that there is criminal negligence on the part of employees at Paria.
Okay, caller.
Caller, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I know you delayed time leaving home to go to work, so thank you very much for calling and sharing that with us. So we here on Talking Point, we share that, we're shaking as well. Good morning, caller from Digger Martin. My apologies, San Fernando. It seems as though we get mixed up this morning.
You think everybody's from Digger Martin?
Yeah,
Good morning, caller.
You hear me?
Yes.
I'm hearing you.
Yes, morning all. You know, I listened to your safety professional this morning, and I was taken aback by what he was saying, because he was let me just say this, in addition to what the caller just said about the lockout tagout and the permit system that they have in Petrotrin. What I was surprised that your subject matter person did not discuss was confined space entry, because that is considered a confined space.
Yeah.
And being considered a confined space, you will have to have confined space training, which is certification in confined space entry, and your training has to be up to date. So it's not that if you do confined space 10 years ago, and you could use it now. You have to update your certification every 2 years, and that different time periods. And he didn't talk about that. And so one of the things that I think will come up in this issue is that whether, okay, they say, no, these divers are certified, but whether their certification was up to date, and whether Petrotrin, or sorry, not Petrotrin, but Paria would have issued these permits based on their up-to-date certification, and whether or not the company has, because if they're doing this type of job, the company would have to have copies of these diverse certification. So, you know, those are some of the things that in the middle of that investigation.
That is a very valuable point, caller.
Would come out. In addition to what Ms. Teixeira was saying there, you know, we also, I am thinking that there have to have simultaneous investigations going on. And I do think an investigation by the police into this matter, because people died, should be going on simultaneously with what other investigation going on, to decide whether or not there is criminal negligence, because the civil thing, as she said, civil different from criminal. And because I haven't heard anything from the police as yet, whether or not they have started investigation. I would like you guys to investigate it and probably tell us if it is that they have started an investigation. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. I think we have a call with us from Arabella. All right, so we lost the caller from Arabella. All right, okay. Call from Arabella, please call back in on the program. Call on the line from Shigones.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning, Professor.
The point we discussed yesterday still bothers me. I cannot see how you could suspend the board. And you talk about putting somebody below or under. You can't put somebody above,
or
because
from
the board
above.
reports to the minister. You cannot put him there. And the person who reports to the board is the permanent secretary, over whom the board exercises oversight. If you put him, he will be putting oversight on himself. Any questions, gentlemen?
I will only make a statement.
That's good.
Yes. Thank you very much for calling in on Talking Point. But let us not get too caught up in the nitty-gritty technical bureaucracy in relation to this.
I think
Let's not get caught up in
standard bureaucratic practice.
Law and order.
No, right, but Professor, I think standard bureaucratic practice might go out the window in the case of a crisis, particularly in the situation where it seems as though the person who's supposed to be ultimately in charge of the crisis does not have the capacity to do so.
So let's not get caught up in that, Professor. I mean,
but he was not the board.
As I said.
No, I know he's not. I know he didn't cause the accident, and there's a lot that he doesn't have control of.
And then the board deal with that.
Yeah, but as I said, Professor, you made your point. We may not see eye to eye on it, but let's not get too close.
I would like to hear what is your rebuttal, if you have one.
I gave you my rebuttal yesterday, and I will just simply be repeating myself.
Well, you give me an opinion.
If I was to do it. Yes, but
yeah.
my opinion remains the same.
Although it seems as though with Stuart Young's involvement, to some extent, it doesn't have to just be from below, it could be from above as well. He has taken point, at least publicly, with regards to the duties of the board or the chairman. While their everyday duties, we don't know to what extent that could just be deferred.
Have a wonderful day, Professor.
I just wanted to go back. There is an issue that we have. I don't think a lot of people have delved into. Some of the safety experts have touched on it, but you have to be careful about it. One of them, the one that I think we're very reluctant to go, is just with regards to the divers and their responsibility. That has to be investigated for the sake of thoroughness. The other one, though, that is not rarely being mentioned particularly, I think, is ultimately the responsibility of the contractor. I know Karen touched on it with regards to liability. Paria still has liability. But all parties involved, this whole matter needs to be checked, and that includes LMCS Limited, because they had to deal with Paria for the work.
Could I just say on that, though, in fairness to the company,
that,
independent contractor?
Hold on, Karen.
Could I just say, in fairness to him, he has also to expect that the employer would make sure that he has systems in place, checks in place, so that when he takes his divers, because that's what they came to do, to dive and weld a line, that all the systems were in place. So in a sense, even the contractor may have a case against Paria, because he has a right to expect that the employer, the person who brought him on, would have done all the necessary checks to make sure there's a safe system of work.
So we have not explored that at length in terms of the independent contractor and the divers. We have not.
Right.
And we have good reason not to as yet. We want to be fair and balanced, but we at this particular point, though, what I would contribute into what you were stating and what Karen was stating is that this independent panel, their report should, you would hope, and it should cover all that. The responsibility and the role of the independent contractor, the divers involved, and Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited, OSHA as well.
I can't remember who made the point, but the point of a union person being in the panel, I am not a fan. I think Karen made the point. I am not a fan of the unions and how they operate. However, unfortunately, transparency is something that is not in great supply in this country. So you have to, at times, you're going to have to overcompensate. Otherwise, it's difficult for people to believe that you're being transparent.
Good morning, caller from St. James.
Good morning to you guys.
Good morning.
Mr. Fisher. Where is the Minister of Labour in all of this?
That's an interesting question.
Fair enough, but I'm not, well, yes, the Minister of Labour and OSHA, yes.
Thank you, caller.
The caller from St. James is right, though, because OSHA will fall under Labour Ministry, as far as I'm aware.
I mean, again, at the very least, he's the line minister of bodies that should look into it. You know, who gets involved and how, there's a lot of details there.
But what I think, because OSHA has now indicated that they themselves have initiated their own independent investigation. Well, independent in terms of OSHA, the body itself, doing it. I don't necessarily think there's any need for the minister to get involved. Less hand in the bowl means that we might be a bit clearer and there might be a bit more, especially in this instance. We could speak about many other instances, but in this particular instance, less political involvement and political interference. I think that is fine if OSHA is investigating it.
The problem is less political interference at times means that things are not pushed through that need to be pushed through. So to some extent, I wouldn't mind the reverse, that the Minister of Labour is involved so that certain aspects are forced through and other considerations,
then you
other
run the risk,
political considerations.
Then you run the risk of it not being pushed through, but the risk of it being forced through and forced through prematurely.
That is true. But Karen, I have to ask because...
No, not only... go ahead.
I have to ask because in larger countries, you would actually see political competition within government agencies and even elected officials. Their various agencies might compete because everybody wants to look good to the public, everybody wants to look good to the boss. The better you look, the more resources you get, the higher up the ladder you go. We don't seem to necessarily have that in TNT. Everybody just falls in line under the leader and doesn't want to step out, doesn't want to be the nail sticking out for the hammer to knock down. Is that fair?
Well, that might be because of our constitution. Under our constitution, whichever party gets the most seats in an election, the leader, then that party then determines who their leader is. Once you're the appointed prime minister, the only positions that the constitution provides for is for that of the prime minister and the attorney general. All other positions are up to the prime minister. And the prime minister can appoint and he can disappoint. He cannot move you as an if you were appointed as a member of parliament, he can't do that unless there's a reason for by-election. So when you are a minister, and especially a minister who's a senator, who hasn't even got the MP to support, they don't even have a voter base. They're not even a member of parliament.
Yeah.
You will do as the prime minister says that you do, depending on the personality of the prime minister also. But if he's a prime minister who says, do as I say, unless you want to be looking for a new job, unless you want to give in your resignation and find that your resignation is accepted, then you could toe the line.
Right.
We do have a call line from Diego Martin.
Finally.
Morning, yes, I got it correct. Good morning, caller from Diego Martin.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
I'm just calling to say face at Diego Martin, really. And also, as Mrs. Teixeira, I agree with her when she says that the contractor has a case against Faria. I also had another point, but I would not bring it up because I don't want my good friend, Professor, to have any conflict with him. But I made my stand yesterday on that one. I maintain that. But I respect him, and I respect him. He's an elderly gentleman like myself, and I would not make the comment I have to make today. But I figured he would answer, and then I wouldn't answer back. So I say good morning to Professor and all of you all day, and have a good day. Everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller, for not being combative with those who disagree with you.
We don't want those who are not mentioned to also be combative. We were trying to prevent that.
And just to be clear, Keaton, I do not say that just for the stations, also because of the station not getting the wrong information out. I said that the independent contractor may have a case in itself against Barrier. So that's why they're doing the fact finding, and that's why we are being careful about how we address this issue.
All right, okay. So we have another caller on the line. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning.
Hello, morning.
Hi, good morning.
You're on the air.
Yes, morning, gentlemen. Morning, Mr. Chair. I just a quick point I want to make. The former Petrotrin was an aged facility. Since after the breakup of Petrotrin shutdown, there would have been I don't know how many upgrades or any improvements in the system. Plus, I don't know. It is said in the HSE matrix that before fatality takes place, there are a number of things that happen prior, which are like incidents and accidents as a warning. So I don't know within the scope of PARIA if they have been having incidents and accidents that have been recorded or not been recorded. That is throughout the field. That is throughout Heritage, Petrotrin, everybody.
Yeah.
And I know personally of things that have happened in the field, accidents and incidents, whether they have been reported or not, we don't know. So this has a wider scope. The second point is within the ministry there are inspectors, and what has happened over the period of time is the old inspectors with experience have left, and you have a lot of young people coming out of UWI engineering degrees but no experience. And in an age field and industry as the oil field in Trinidad, you need a lot of experience to manage it, to inspect it, and to know what to look for. So for that gentleman who talk about the resigning and the board, I just want to say this. In any first world society with energy problems such as this, in great disasters, minor disasters, people of their own volition do the honorable thing and they resign. Trinidad has yet to understand honorable. We bestow these titles on people of honorable, but Trinidad is yet to understand what is honorable. And when people hold responsibility, they must know there is that point in time where they have to be accountable for the responsibilities they hold. I could talk a lot more about this, and I know about the oil field. I worked 25 years in the oil field, and this pains me this morning to see a situation like this. I have worked in the refinery and controlled the entire field of Petrotrin when it was alive, and I'm seeing and hearing of incidents all over the field. Whether they are reported or not, we don't know, right? We just had a guy fall through a platform and a multinational platform from one level to the next. 2 broken legs, rest shop, hospital, covered up. Nobody's saying about that. 2 fires broke out. 2 NGC platform, former NGC platform. We do hear accountability for those things. So I am saying that something is desperately wrong in the energy sector and somebody needs to investigate. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. I just want to say, we have two ongoing problems just across the board in a lot of areas. Maintenance and succession planning, right? Because the caller pointed out, you need to pass on institutional knowledge to the people that you're hiring. You cannot just replace them thinking. And usually, I know in the private sector, particularly abroad, you replace experienced workers with inexperienced young workers because they're cheaper. And a lot of times when you mess that up, you lose a lot of institutional knowledge and it comes back to bite you in the you-know-where. But maintenance, I'm sure everybody has horror stories about maintenance for public facilities or vehicles or agencies, assets, buildings, the buses, the ferries.
The EFCL.
The airport, and we could go on. And this is just one more factor on aged equipment, aged infrastructure. What are we going to expect at a time when the government has constantly put maintenance of things on the back burner because of budgetary concerns?
I don't have anything to add to that. You said it all, basically. Karen, you know, sure. Thank you. Karen, as we conclude this morning's program.
Neither do I, really.
As we conclude this morning's program, I want to thank you very much for joining us.
Except, can I just say that there's a difference between maintenance of a bus and maintenance of a rig.
Yes.
Where there's extreme, and I know people who were back in the day who were literally had their faces crushed in by cranes. So that's why they're paid well, extremely well, because the job is a dangerous job in and of itself.
Yeah, but, well, that's it, Karen. That's it for this morning. Thank you very much. Sean Michael Small, I'm still digesting all of this. The last caller, for the first caller from San Fernando and this last call now, people are hurting. People who have been in this for so many years have been hurting, and to the family once more we express our deepest condolences.
I think this could be a bit of a wake-up call. Maybe I'm just unaware, but it seems as though we are not prepared for a crisis, in part because we don't necessarily go through a lot of these situations on a regular basis. So that's understandable. When you don't, you're just not going to have a certain level of proficiency because you haven't had to deal with it. That is human nature. However, I do think we need to be better prepared for these things, because I will go back to what I said yesterday. Every time I hear that it took an hour for this person to come or a couple hours for this response to be happen, my insides twist, because it's one thing if they unfortunately died in an accident. It's another thing if any attempt to respond to the accident took too long. Then preparations, what would be the point? The best laid plans don't matter if you can't actually do it in time.
Anyway, folks, this speaks very loudly to just generally our all-around preventative measures in place, our maintenance that is in place. That's always been an issue, but more so it goes into OSHA standards across the board. And just let me reference town and country planning. We know they're not doing their job. EMA, we question whether or not they're doing their job. In relation to OSHA, it goes across the board now. Is OSHA up to par with all these companies to ensure that there's a safe working environment? 4 lives have been tragically lost due to this. And as I said, I pray that we get some learning lessons out of this. I can only hope that's the case.
Quick thing, usually, as I said yesterday as well, we do a good job of preventing accidents that cause deaths. Usually. However, we now need to look at the fact, what else is aging? What else is going to fail, like the Beetham sewage leak? The aging infrastructure is going to catch up with us. Are we doing preventative maintenance? Are we doing the sort of renovations to the system that we need?
Well, let me just quote the Minister of National Security. Please exercise more patience. Anyway, folks, that's it for Talking Points.
I am out of patience.
We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.